Hi guys and welcome to this video. And in this video I promise you to completely change and revolutionize your entire view about OCD and in that your entire recovery journey. Because what I'm going to be talking about here, I believe, is going to be the future of all OCD treatments in years to come, 10, 20 years from now. I believe the information in this video are going to be the common knowledge because what I'm going to share with you here works with my clients amazingly. The moment I interpreted these things that I'm going to be talking about here, that's the moment where my business took off and I was able to help so many people here in the Czech Republic because I'm a psychologist here and I'm myself an OCD sufferer. I would say former sufferer actually, because right now I don't actively suffer, but you never know. It may come back. But this is something that I believe has to be spoken about. And that's my promise for you in this video. What I'm going to share with you here can be seen nowhere else on YouTube. It can be seen nowhere else on the internet, and it's completely revolutionary. So, first things first, there are what's called anxiety disorders and there are what's called personality disorders. Now, I believe it's super important to distinguish between the two. Most people who go into therapy, they don't know the difference. But personality disorders are narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, etc., etc. They're more complex than anxiety disorders. They're harder to treat than anxiety disorders, and they take way longer. And while anxiety disorders, you may think of, for example, arachnophobia, you just sort of face your anxiety, you face your fears, and the anxiety drops and you're recovered from the disorder. Personality disorders are so much more complex than that. Basically, personality disorder is like, anxiety disorder may take months to treat, personality disorders may take years or your entire life to treat, and they never fully vanish, they never fully go away. They may go into what's called remission, so you may not feel the symptoms as much, but they are still part of your personality. It's like you are born with a personality, that's your personality, but it's also it's functioning in a disordered patterns, in a disordered way, but it's still your personality, kind of. You will still have these tendencies to be narcissistic, to be borderline. You gotta fight them though. Why is this important for our video? Because OCD to me is right in the middle. While most people believe that OCD is an anxiety disorder, and you may have social anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, you may have arachnophobia, you may have agoraphobia, which is that you're afraid to go outside and you're just in your home because you're so anxious of anything, of people when you go outside, of your surroundings outside. Well, to me, OCD is right in the middle of these two. OCD to me is not an anxiety disorder. Most people take it for an anxiety disorder. I believe it's not. And in the diagnostic manual, DSM-5, which helps us distinguish different disorders, OCD was actually cut away from anxiety disorders and put separately. So it's not under anxiety disorders now, it's under obsessive compulsive disorder. And there are symptoms of OCD written underneath it. And this is crucial for this video. This is absolutely key because if you view OCD as anxiety disorder, I think you're set very badly from the start because OCD is A, much more complex, B, it takes way longer to treat than other anxiety disorders, and C, I believe it affects to an extent your entire personality. It's not just about your anxiety, it's about everything that you do in your life from A to Z. It's about how you live your life, how you behave towards other people, what your goals are, what your values are, everything, and this needs to be addressed, guys. This needs to be talked about because anxiety disorders are more severe, anxiety disorders less severe, and OCD is right in the middle of them, I believe. And so now that we established this, this puts us to point number 2, which is that I believe there are 5 different types of compulsions, not just our classical compulsions that we think of, like washing your hands or, being like reassuring yourself with your doctor when you think that you may have cancer with health OCD. That's the most known ones, but I believe there are four other types of compulsions. And So, in that way, I believe OCD is not just about not washing your hands or not doing your compulsions. I believe it's about so much more than that. I believe it's about changing your entire personality. I believe it's about, or not changing your entire personality, more like cutting the edges of it. Being like hedgehog, or hedgehog, and not having your these like thorns as much, being able to pull them down. And these five types of compulsions are reassuring compulsions. This is or avoidance compulsions. This is what we talk about when we think of all the classical compulsions like hand washing. Then you have what I call lifestyle compulsions. These are all the compulsions that you may do, which are extremes in your lifestyle. Your lifestyle are your everyday habits. Okay, so let's say that you scroll all day long on your phone, you go to bed late, you wake up late. That's one extreme. You don't live your life to the fullest. The other extreme would be you work all the time. You're compulsive in your working. You never meet friends. You don't have a partner. That's another extreme. Now, lifestyle compulsions are about these two extremes, and you gotta recognize them. You gotta treat them like compulsions. Oh, I scroll. I'm on social media a lot. Well, that's a compulsion. I gotta cut it off, and I will cut it off. Okay. Otherwise, I'm not gonna recover from OCD. And or I work so much compulsively, I can never stop working. I have no balance. I only work. Again, that's a lifestyle compulsion. Lifestyle means your daily habits, and when it's compulsion, lifestyle compulsion, it means it's out of balance. It means you cannot help it. You cannot help yourself. You do something with like, oh, I can't help it. I have to do it that way. People tell me, oh, I can't help it. I just can't start, to change my daily regime. I just, I'm so used to this. Well, you're compulsively clinging to it, and that's why I call it a compulsion. And guys, this is super important. If you don't address these things, like I have clients all the time who tell me, hey, I watched all your videos because I have videos in Czech Republic, in my country, and I read your book. I wrote an ebook there, and I don't do any compulsions, and I still have OCD a lot. And that's why I created these four other types of compulsions, because some people, they cut all their reassuring or avoidance compulsions. Those are compulsions that are associated with your main fear, like contamination or hurting someone or not being in love with my partner, or it may be anything that's your worst fear. People sometimes cut these off, or I had some of my clients, we cut those off, but they still had OCD a lot because they didn't go to school, they didn't go to work, their regime was off, their lifestyle was off, their habits were off, they were not the best version of themselves. And this is exactly what we're addressing here, because if you treat OCD only as anxiety disorder, then just not doing those reassuring and avoidance compulsions, like not washing your hands, not touching everything in gloves with contamination OCD, with harm OCD, not hiding your knives, talking to people, wearing a knife maybe. So maybe, you will go crazy, you will stab them. Anything that stops your reassurance, ERP, basically what ERP therapy talks about. If we would reduce those and OCD would be just an anxiety disorder, OCD is gone. But that's not my experience with my clients whatsoever. And as I say, I have many clients who directly come to me and they read my book, they watch all my videos on my Czech channel, and they're like, hey, but I still have OCD. How come? Like, I don't think I do any compulsions at all. And I do what I call compulsive audit with them, which is kind of like a weird wording for it. Maybe it would better be called audit of compulsions, but I kind of like the word, I kind of like the name compulsive audit because it sounds kind of funny. So I do the compulsive audit with them, as I call it, and we go through these five types of compulsions that I'm going to be talking about later. And usually the reassurance or avoidance compulsions, they literally have zero. But then when we go, maybe some rumination, that's kind of more like almost like automatic in them. So they are like, hey, I kind of stop the rumination as much as I can, but some of it is automatic. I can't really stop it. So then we go to lifestyle compulsions. And there, these two extremes, either being too driven, overdriven, as I like to call it, and as they, as some psychologists call it, or being the opposite of it, which is much more common. I would say 95% of people are in the extreme where they just don't live the best life they could with OCD. They wake up late, they scroll all the time. Now, 5% of my clients, they have the opposite extreme. Just yesterday I had a client who, she's extremely workaholic, extremely workaholic. She works like all the time. She does nothing else. That's another compulsion of what I call lifestyle compulsion. These two. You gotta be in the middle between these two extremes. Why? Because disorders love extremes. OCD loves extremes. You gotta be in the middle, right? The middle is healthy, the middle is balanced. You gotta be balanced in your daily habits. What I mean by balance, the good question here is, what would a normal person do? Now, some people may be offended by the normal person, but I truly do believe that we're not normal with OCD. You know, I truly do believe it's not just anxiety disorder. It's not just, oh, I have this, I truly do believe it affects everything about us pretty much. It's more like personality disorder than just anxiety disorder. It's right in the middle. And so I just always ask myself, hey, what would a normal person, and by normal I mean someone who doesn't have OCD, doesn't have depression, has normal, highly, I would say has mental health and highly functioning brain that's on their team, that doesn't fight them all the time, what would they do? How would their regime look like? Would they work 16 hours a day? No, that's one extreme. Would they scroll all the time, wake up super late and just, be on computer all the time doing unproductive stuff? Absolutely no. So that's the second type of compulsion you got to focus on. You got to write down all your lifestyle compulsions, all your reassuring compulsions, but those you probably know. I'm doing this channel more for advanced people who know about ERP therapy. So those of you know, maybe you have hit and run OCD and you always go back to check whether you haven't run over someone when you're driving in your car. You know those, I believe. But write them down regardless. But then you should write your lifestyle compulsions. Now, third type of compulsions is anxiety of anxiety compulsions. And this term is from Albert Ellis and his rational emotive behavioral therapy that I have a diploma in London. And I'm currently still in my, it's called advanced training in rational emotive behavioral therapy. So this is a therapy that I'm educated in and that I have a diploma from, the basic level diploma so far, because I'm still like a trainee therapist in this type of therapy. But this type of therapy recognizes what's called secondary emotional disturbance, or secondary emotions, secondary unhealthy emotions, it's sometimes called. And it says that most people don't have just anxiety, but they have anxiety of anxiety. So they're not just anxious that they may stab someone, as in harm OCD. They're not just anxious that they may get contaminated, as in contamination OCD. But they are literally anxious of these anxious feelings, of feeling anxiety all the time, of having their palms sweaty, of having irritable bowel syndrome, maybe can be one symptom of anxiety, of all these different things, of being feeling anxious just all the time, feeling these weird feelings in my body, these uncomfortable feelings, maybe not sleeping because of it. They hate that. And this is what I call anxiety of anxiety compulsions. Most of the people who stop doing reassurance and avoidance compulsions, which again is what 99% of the world recognizes as the only compulsions, and they don't do that, they usually get better, and they feel a lot of anxiety, which is, that's how it should be when you don't do compulsions. But then they sort of get driven back by OCD. So the classical scenario is a client comes to me, she has harm OCD, and she's like, Pavel, I'm now free from my harm OCD for five days and I feel so good, but and then we talk about her week, and she says, oh, my boyfriend wanted to watch this horror movie, or this true crime movie about some true crime that happened with me. And I'm like, oh, and have you watched it? That would be a great thing to watch for you. And she's like, no, And I'm like, why? And she's like, well, because, I've been better for a week now. My OCD is really not bothering me for like a week. And so, I just thought that it's gonna just come back to my mind. I'm gonna start thinking about it more if I watch this movie. And I didn't want that. So I just don't watch the movie. But OCD lives from your fear. OCD lives from your fear. And this is so crucial, guys. Like, because if you really want to recover to the point that I'm recovered, for example, which is, I don't want to say I'm fully recovered because I think you can always fall back, just like alcoholics can always go back to their drinking. But yeah, I don't feel OCD. And I've had maybe the worst OCD I've ever seen. I would literally say I've had the worst OCD I've ever seen, maybe even read off. I'm gonna show you some videos of me on this channel one day because I recorded myself in the past, and I had OCD since I was 7 years old, and it was, I there was not one thing I could do. There was zero hobbies until I was 20. Then I picked on going to the gym. There was zero hobbies for 13 years of my life. Zero. Not one hobby. I couldn't do one thing. That's how bad my OCD was. There was no thing in my life apart from brushing my teeth and going to school that I could do and playing video games. Even that I couldn't do later on. But anyway, that's for another video. The point of the story is I am really a big advocate of these anxiety compulsions, because if you're just not afraid of the main fear anymore as much, and you're just not washing your hands, let's say, and your main fear is contamination, and so you reduce that main fear because you face it, you don't run away from it, that's great and all. But if you then do anxiety compulsions and you start to just you get better because you don't do your reassurance compulsions, but then, and this happened to me all the time, I got better. And don't even get hooked on I got better. That's not important. What's important is I didn't do these compulsions. That's the only criterion. I don't care if someone's anxious or not. I don't care about that at all. I have so many clients who are not anxious, and they're way worse off than some of my clients who have 10 out of 10 anxiety. Why? Because these 10 out of 10 anxiety clients don't do their compulsions. And then I have so many people who are somewhere in the middle on their OCD journey where, life is kind of good. I don't do as much compulsions, but I still do a ton. And I have way less anxiety. So anxiety is not a criterion. That's not important, guys. Get it out of your head. Everyone's like, oh, you're fully recovered because you have no anxiety. That's complete bullshit. The fully recovered person, there's only one criteria. They don't do any compulsions. Zero, okay? Now, anyway, that's not as important now. Anxiety compulsions, most of the times, you don't do compulsions. You don't do them. You have a lot of anxiety, but then, your life changes. You may feel more anxious, but you feel more freedom later on down the road, and you're like, oh, I'm really starting to get free from this thing. I'm not as bullied anymore. I'm starting to be the stronger one here in this abusive relationship. Not OCD, but me. I'm the stronger one now. And then it always happens like with that client of mine that I told you about, always people come, hey, I rather don't watch these types of movies still. I rather don't do this still. I rather don't see this article still. Because that's anxiety compulsions. And that's how OCD gets right back into the mix, and it convinces you that it's your thoughts. Oh, I don't really want to think about it. My life's kind of much better now after not doing compulsions. Yeah, but you still do compulsions. Only they're anxiety compulsions because you're afraid. You have anxiety not as much maybe from about stabbing someone, but your main source of anxiety now is about having what I call an OCD episode again. Your main source of anxiety now is about anxiety coming back to your life again. Not sleeping, irritable bowel syndrome, all these things. You don't want to bother with it. You want to have your good life. The worst sentence I ever hear from my clients. That's why I wrote in my book. I wrote the book firstly like 2.5 or 3 years ago even, very long time. But then I updated it. But I wrote it a long time ago, and in the book, I even then when I started working with clients, I wrote in the book the worst sentence in all of OCD treatment is, "Oh, finally a good life," because that's how anxiety compulsions go back. You cannot want to have a finally good life. Person who's addicted on, I worked with people addicted on meth, heroin, cocaine. That was my first year as a counselor. I got all these clients, and the worst thing they can do is think they have, oh, I have a good life again now. No, you never beat your addiction in addictions. That's why I don't like people saying, "Oh, I'm fully recovered from OCD." I can't say I'm fully recovered from OCD right now. I don't feel any symptoms of OCD. But I rather not say that. I say it sometimes. I made a check video where I say it, but it's, guys, you may always fall back. And people with addictions, they hell freaking know that. They know that. One psychologist on YouTube, he said, you never beat your addiction. It's not like you killed some guy in a video game and he's beat and yo, I beat my addiction. That's so stupid approach. Such a stupid approach. I'm sorry, because it may come back. You stop being vigilant, and that's, people get. I call it ego inflation. Their ego is inflated. Oh, I'm over it now, and they go right back into compulsions. And they go into compulsions, A, because their ego is inflated, and B, because they don't know that anxiety compulsions exist. So they think that if they're not washing their hands, they're all good to go, but they're not really all good to go. Because now they're, better example I think would be with that Harmo City example, they may not hide their knives anymore. They may talk to their people around them, not hide themselves away from them. They don't do any harmosity compulsions anymore, but they still do anxiety compulsions. They still want to keep their normal life now. They still want to not rather watch the movie that could, trigger them, because maybe they're a woman and there's some woman in the movie who goes crazy and stabs someone. And they're like, oh my God, I cannot watch this. Otherwise, I'm gonna go right back into the OCD episode, and now I'm OCD free for 5 days. I don't wanna risk that. OCD is a monster that's being fed by certainty and fear. The more certain you're trying to get that it won't happen again, I won't get anxiety again, OCD won't return again, OCD won't get worse, the worse it is for you, because the more OCD grows. You're feeding it like you would feed your dog. You're feeding it, but it's a dog from Sherlock Holmes' story, and it's gonna eat you alive. It's a horror movie dog. You don't want to feed it with certainty, and you certainly don't want to feed it with fear. In this instance, you're doing both. You're feeding it with certainty that OCD is not going to return, and you're feeding it with fear of OCD returning, of anxiety returning. You're not anxious anymore of stabbing someone as much. You're anxious of your anxiety. That's the third type of compulsions. You gotta cut it, and it's not just one. Write it down. Write it down. Be aware of it, have it on your radar, and write down every fear of your compulsions that you did in the past, because guess what? They may happen again, even if you're not doing them now. Every fear of fear compulsion that you believe your OCD, try to think as your OCD. If I were my OCD, what would I use against me as my fear of fear compulsion? I never heard that question ever said, ever. And I've read dozens of books about OCD. I've never heard that question. Nor on YouTube, nor on podcasts, which I love OCD Stories podcast, my favorite ever, but never heard that, sadly. Think, what would my OCD do to me now? Literally put yourself in the mind of your OCD, in its shoes. You know it better than anyone. Everyone always says, hey, your OCD knows you better than anyone, it knows all your triggers. Well, that's common knowledge, but you know your OCD better than anyone. It's mutual relationship. Buddy, you know your OCD better than anyone, and you know what it doesn't like. You know how you can trigger it. You know what it wouldn't like you to do, like watching that movie. You know what anxiety compulsions it may want you to do. So go out and do them. Not do them. Then you got fourth type, which is low frustration tolerance compulsions. Now, again, this is stemming from rational emotive behavioral therapy. But low frustration tolerance compulsions are similar. Basically, it's, let's say, for me, there are two types of them. A, it may be anything where you feel so frustrated that you, for example, just start smoking. Very common for my clients. So it's not lifestyle compulsion. They are similar, but because they don't smoke regularly. Lifestyle compulsions are things you do regularly, on a regular basis, maybe weekly basis, daily basis. Low frustration tolerance compulsions are not triggered per se by timing or by time. Oh, I do this, every Wednesday. They're triggered by your frustration. So they're triggered by you being so frustrated from your OCD that you just start smoking. Very common for my clients. Another client, very, very, that just she just told me about this a couple of days ago, and very common is you eat so much sugar. I've got a client, he buys 5 Haribo gummy bear, packages, large packages. He's an adult guy, and he buys them 5 to 6, and he just eats them, stuffs himself with them whenever he's too frustrated from life or OCD. And again, we're not just addressing OCD here or anxiety disorder that OCD is here. We're addressing your whole personality, your whole life. And that's why I love this approach so much, because you may grow thanks to it, which is something that I will get to later on in the video, towards the end of the video. But write all these down, everything that you do when you're too frustrated, that in order to sort of not feel that frustration, which is training your brain, hey, we got to run away from bad feelings. And that's why your OCD is so strong, because you've been running away from bad feelings for your entire life. Another thing is that there is second type of low frustration tolerance compulsions. And this is that you may, and this is what I did, I was not washing myself. I've never seen such a brutal OCD in a kid. So I've got 10 out of 10 OCD when I was 7 years old, 10 out of 10. And 7 years old, third grade elementary school. So the thing is, I didn't want to wash myself for a long time, guys. And even in adolescence, like it appears really weird to me, like really, really weird, crazy weird. Because then I literally, I used to be a guy who ironed his hair and was super into fashion back in the day and stuff. But that was from when I was 15 onwards maybe. But before that, later childhood and early adolescence, I just didn't wash much, because I was I didn't want to tolerate the feeling of feeling cold when you leave the hot shower, So I would go into a really hot shower, I would leave, and before you dry yourself with your towel, I would feel very cold. And I didn't want that. I just couldn't tolerate that feeling. That's how low my frustration tolerance was. So this is second type. It's not running away from frustration all the time. There may be another type of these compulsions, low frustration tolerance compulsions, and that is that you just avoid frustration altogether. So again, try not to do that, and write these things down, or think of them at least. But no, guys, you know what? Write them down. It's super important to do this compulsive audit. Now, another fifth one, the last one that we will talk about today, and the last one that I recognize so far, but I think there may be more types of compulsions. Maybe, I'm not sure. I'm looking for them in my clients and in what I used to do. But fifth type is that you may do compulsions that I call self-esteem compulsions or interpersonal compulsions. Sorry, interpersonal. So interpersonal compulsions it's everything you do with people where you reassure yourself that they will see you a certain way, or that they will not think badly of you, or that they will not reject you, refuse you. Anything that's related to certainty about how others would see you, how they would see your image, how your self-image would be, is called self-esteem compulsions or interpersonal relationship compulsions. Guys, again, write these down. Most common ones. I have a client, he always wants to give me a gift. He's a very wealthy client, and I'm not going to say what sort of assortment he sells just to protect his anonymity, but he always wants to sell me his goods, and he's always like, hey, here's, I have very luxury goods, it's nothing for me to send these to you, and it will just it will make me so happy. And I'm always like, hey, I'm so glad, but I can't accept this is too expensive. But he's always every session, he's even sending me messages and emails hey, I really, it really wouldn't do me anything, don't worry about it. I can just really send it to you. And then I told him, hey, this is compulsive. And then we did compulsive audit, and he was always saying to me, I do no compulsions, zero whatsoever, Pavel. And then when we did this audit, he did no compulsions in all four spheres apart from low frustration tolerance. There he did compulsions. But then we started talking about his self-esteem compulsions, and he was like, oh my God, I thought I'm not doing any compulsions for 2 months. I'm doing compulsions all the time, because his company, his parents basically, He got it from his parents, and it was passed down to him. And he's always afraid that people will think, oh, that he's a like a rich kid, you know, that he's like spoiled by his parents, that he doesn't deserve it. And so he tries to treat everyone like not even super nice. He tries to treat everyone like super nice multiplied by a million. He's just like all over, like, hey, no, let me do this for you. Oh, no, you go to elevator first. No, it's good. You may go, you may go. Oh, no, you go first. No, you go first. Really? No, you go first. You go first. And he does these all the time, he says. Again, and now when he connected it to OCD, he was like, oh my God, you're absolutely right. I'm totally seeking certainty there. I'm totally reassuring myself, and I have this unhealthy fear. And yeah, it's an obsession. I always am like, oh, people will think, you know, I inherited my company or something, or that I'm spoiled, or even the people that I don't know of, you know, like strangers, they're like, they may think, oh, he's just some like, you know, super rich guy with massive ego. Like, look at him, you know, on his expensive clothes. Sorry, at his expensive clothes. And so he tries to compensate for that. Again, massive compulsion. So write all these down. You know, it may be the inability to say no. That's self-esteem compulsion. It may be you being, you know, a pushover, pretty much. That's very often the case. So write all these down. And now, guys, I really gotta go to pee. That's you know, not a good thing to say in a video, but I really gotta go to. So just to finish this in fast, you know, I would like to tell you the importance of having not just one compulsions, which 99% of the world recognizes. Hey, just don't wash your hands. Don't, you know, hide your knives. And you write all these reassuring compulsions down, all these things by which you seek certainty that your main fears won't happen, and you're good. Well, that's not the case, I believe. That would be the case if OCD would be an anxiety disorder. But I believe it's not. I believe it's in the middle of anxiety and personality disorders. And I frankly do believe that, funny enough, every client that fully recovered, I don't like that term, but every client that I have that really recovered to the point where they have their life back pretty much completely, they always say me this. They always tell me the same thing. Hey, I'm so glad I had OCD now. Or almost always, not everyone, but the ones who do it without antidepressants, pretty much always tell me, I'm so glad to have my that I had OCD. Now, why? Because if you take OCD for anxiety disorder, you usually take yourself to be here and your OCD to be here. And you want OCD just to leave the picture completely. You know, this is the picture of your life. And here you are, here's OCD. OCD's stronger than you, it's above you, it's bullying you, and you just want to do this. Oh, antidepressants. Oh, this. Oh, here, quick fix, you know, eat this pill, this thing, you know, this oil, this CBD, I don't know. Oh, it's out of the picture now. It's out of the picture. We want to do this, you know, and even if when we start treatment, we're always looking, oh, hey, is it working, not doing compulsions? Is anxiety down? How long will it take for me to not do compulsions until my anxiety drops and I so-called habituate to my OCD? We always focus on lowering this. We never focus on bringing ourselves up. And that's the big mistake. There's a number one mistake, guys. If you focus on this, it's like, I don't even know what to, it's like, you know, you cannot focus on this. You cannot fully control this. It's like you want it to be out of the picture or you want it to be lowered. That's a losing game. What you want to do, you may win some on this, but it's not effective in my book. What you want to do is make yourself stronger. And the only way you make yourself stronger is, hey, maybe you will be able to say, hey, I stopped smoking because of OCD, because it was low frustration tolerance compulsion. I start waking up early because it was a lifestyle compulsion. I start to treat, you know, have more time with my wife because that was another lifestyle compulsion I did. I never made time for her. Never was balanced in that, you know. Maybe I started to do a YouTube channel because I've always wanted to on the side, and I was just not being the best version of myself. And all these little things, all these 5 types of compulsions, but all these 4 extra types that I provided you with, because normally in every YouTube video you can just hear about the first type pretty much, and in every OCD book, all of these build you up and they make you so much stronger than your OCD in the end. That OCD is still strong opponent, don't get me wrong, but now you're stronger. You've overgrown it, you've overcome it by becoming a stronger version than your formal version. And now you're the best version of yourself. Now you're strong. Strength means ability to overcome resistance. The stronger you are, the more resistance you can overcome. And as Stephen Pressfield says in his book, The Work of Art, resistance is when you don't want to do something. You want to write a book, you feel resistance. You want to wake up early, I don't really want to. You want to not do compulsions, but it's going to be uncomfortable, I don't want to do it. You overcome all that resistance. You're like a guy who can bench, I don't know, 160 kilos on a bench press. I don't know how many pounds that is, But before you were a guy who could bench maybe like 60 kilos. So now you can bench maybe like 2 times more, even more usually, and you end up like so much stronger than you were, and then you end up even stronger than your OCD, which is a very strong opponent for anybody to contend with. And now you're stronger than your OCD, meaning it cannot really top you anymore. It cannot really bully you anymore because you're the stronger one now in this previously abusive relationship. And I wouldn't even call it a relationship. It was just bullying you. And now it can't because you're stronger than you were. You're someone who cannot be bullied. You could be bullied here. You can definitely be bullied here. Not here though. And the only way to get here is not just to stop washing your hands, guys. And I don't want to knock off reassurance and avoidance, compulsions as I call them. But it's just too little. It will not do for really hardcore OCDs like I had. It will just not do. And you're going to cut yourself short here. And you're definitely cutting yourself short if you're just focusing on those. Those are the most important. Don't get me wrong. They will get you here. But they won't get you here in my book. You really got to become the best version of myself. And I truly am. I'm the embodiment of everything that I'm talking about here. I am the best version of myself. 100%. At least that's what I believe. And I live my life in a way that I would never. I do daily reflection at the end of the day. And it's just like, my life now, my days, my life, and the level that I'm content with it is 10 out of 10. Literally, I love my life on 10 out of 10. And the only way for that is because I'm a really disciplined individual now. I'm a really competent individual now. In every area of my life that is of interest to me, I do really, really well, guys. And I'm so much more confident, so much more proud of myself because what I say to myself, I usually do. I'm just, this is not an ego fest for me, and I really gotta pee now. So I really gotta end this video, let's brace myself. This is how you get strong. You want to go pee and you don't. You finish the video. But anyway, the thing is, it's incomparable where I'm now before with where I was before. And now OCD can't bully me. It cannot bully this version of me. It could bully the previous version, but now I'm so strong, so disciplined, so competent in my life and in my relationships, I spend 0 seconds a day on social media. I have no other addictions. I don't even drink coffee. I don't drink tea. I don't smoke. I have nothing holding me back. Before I was fully addicted to video games and social media. So how can OCD hold me back? I'm able to deal with so many stressors now that most people just can't, because most people may be here. I was here, now I'm here. And this is not to pet my ego, but it's just to say that, guys, if you do this journey, if you approach OCD not just as something, I gotta deal with this anxiety, but as a personal growth journey, as something where you gotta change your entire sort of life, that's when in the end you can say, hey, I'm so glad I had OCD because it taught me all of this. But the only way to do it is if you don't recognize just one type of compulsions, but these 5 types of compulsions, which will enable you to start, this is a compulsion. I wake up late. I smoke so much. I play video games all the time. I don't go to work. And you start working on these things. Now you can say in the end that, I'm so glad I had OCD because I wouldn't stop smoking otherwise. I wouldn't stop playing games otherwise, etc., etc. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope there will be at least 5 views. I know my channel is not viewed at all. YouTube is very saturated, English YouTube with OCD videos, but I still think I got something to say that most people don't talk about. That's what I'm trying to focus on here. And I would be very glad for a subscribe, for putting that ringing bell on next to the subscribe button. For any like, comment, I'll be super glad for it. And now, I really gotta run, guys, to my toilet. Have a great one, and see you guys later, and peace.